Here's a thrilling story. Kelly knows nothing about medical terms, using Big Head's words. The pilot reluctantly agreed to Kelly's funny suggestion for passenger safety. They devised a perfect plan. Upon landing, the pilot sent 3 soldiers to find the radio, planning to abandon them. This raised many eyebrows. The pilot was speechless. Kelly said only they 3 could read the English signs. Big Head agreed, but insisted Jim join, with the flight attendant as translator. The pilot didn't want the unaware flight attendant involved, but refusing would arouse suspicion. He pretended generosity and agreed. After they left, he revealed the soldiers were war criminals. Kelly feared opposition, but the crowd's reaction assured her otherwise. They thought their plan flawless, but a hiccup arose. Jim tricked the 3 into a warehouse, locked them, and hurriedly explained, dragging the flight attendant out. Unexpectedly, the flight attendant was momentarily dazed and refused to leave them behind. As the door was about to burst open, Jim had no choice but to abandon her, raced out of the shop, and took off in the car while the soldiers opened fire to stop them. But it was too late. They hurried to chase. The flight attendant wanted to join, but they ignored her. Meanwhile, Jim reached the plane first, informing the bearded man the attendant didn't come. With the situation dire, no one delayed, the plane began to taxi. The pilot, hearing the attendant didn't board, wanted to stop, but soldiers fired on plane. Stopping would invite retaliation. The pilot had to rev up for takeoff. As the plane accelerated, soldiers lost their footing, except the one who shot the old man. Suddenly, a terrified passenger noticed the aircraft window had been shot out. He panicked and tried to stop the takeoff, but the plane had soared thanks to the pilot's acceleration. Later, the pilot suspected the soldier shot it while chasing. Unexpectedly, the pilot didn't take any emergency measures, but rather had the passengers watch the cracked window. Clearly, no one wanted that, as if it suddenly broke and the cabin pressure leaked, they'd be sucked out. The pilot said it was double-paned and very safe. Unaware, the major flew into a rage, scolding him not to spout nonsense about the sun mutating. He claimed everyone was in danger if exposed to sunlight, so decisions needed a group vote. The pilot wasn't buying it because he had to ensure passenger safety. However, the major saw it as a joke. The airline was gone, now the weapon in hand mattered. On hearing the threat, the pilot's temper flared, testing the major's courage. As the 2 were at a standoff, an alarm sounded in the cockpit. The pilot rushed to check, but it soon stopped. They were a bit dazed. After confirming it wasn't a malfunction, the alarm blared again. The pilot realized it was a prank and someone was messing with them. Kelly thought it impossible who could climb into a plane from a mile high without gear. The pilot was equally puzzled, but soon both felt a tingle at the back of their necks. The possible intruder was the soldier chasing the plane. If the enemy sabotaged the system, the plane would be lost, and the situation critical. The pilot ascended to 10,000 meters, deployed the landing gear, intending to freeze the soldier and toss him overboard. However, the soldier was still alive, and passengers in the cabin suffered first. Cabin pressure rose beyond the crack's limit with altitude, prompting the black girl to seek help. Just then, the window shattered, sending the plane into a wild spin. Oxygen masks dropped, and everyone grabbed them as lifelines. The pilot quickly retracted the landing gear and lowered the altitude, but the turbulence didn't let up. The mechanic urgently scrambled to find materials to seal the averted disaster temporarily, but bad news followed. A passenger with lung disease lost his oxygen line. The mother guided her struggling son to adjust his breathing. But it wasn't sustainable. Bearded Man devised a solution, cut the oxygen tube, carved 2 holes, taped them, and connected to an oxygen machine. Sure enough, the man could breathe normally. The mother sighed in relief, grateful to Bearded Man. However, the major struck as the crisis eased. He accused the pilot of misjudging window strength. Trying to defend, the pilot could only return to the cockpit, frustrated by the obvious facts. Leaving the soldier dead, alarms still rang. The pilot suspected he survived due to equipment heat. Kelly asked what next, and the pilot proposed cutting the floor to access the landing gear. Without delay, the major and 2 men acted quickly. They cut the floor and prepared to open the gap. The major aimed his gun, but saw nothing inside the pitch-black hole. Just as the major relaxed his grip, a hand shot out, trying to grab the weapon, and bit down on his finger, preventing him from shooting. The bearded man, seeing this, decisively seized the weapon and fired at the hole. He expected cheers, but got weird looks. David had seen Bearded Man dissect a corpse for diamonds during a landing. Everyone thought he desecrated a body. Bearded Man said he was a patriot hiring the deceased to smuggle treasures using the corpse. But the death wasn't on him, it was due to the guy's failure to follow procedure. Yet, this excuse didn't sway the crowd. After landing, Jim repaired the window, while the others began to judge Bearded Man. Faced with most people questioning him, Bearded Man was left speechless. He thought he'd be kicked off the plane, but surprisingly, his former nemesis, the Major, stood up for him, as he knew about a shelter's. However, his location was unclear, needing Bearded Man's wisdom to search NATO. The black girl wasn't happy. Should we abandon Bearded Man and follow you to the shelter? At that moment, if the Major said no, had be labelled selfish. So, reluctantly, he guaranteed Bearded Man's safety. If the other crossed the line, both would be tossed off. The pilot organised a vote, and majority followed minority, sparing Bearded Man. The next stop of their escape was the Plainstick City. Everyone rejoiced at the news of the shelter. However, the joy was short-lived. The plane began a rapid descent. Kelly was thrown out of the lounge and rushed to the cockpit to inquire. The pilot said it was too high, despite descending. He then grinned maniacally and muttered to himself, alerting Kelly. The pilot hadn't slept since escaping. Kelly suggested rest, but he furiously insisted he was fine, clearly illogical. In the climate-controlled cockpit, the pilot was sweating. Kelly noticed, but dismissed it until she found him passed out in the bathroom. After diagnosing, the black girl found the pilot fainted from an infected wound. He needed surgery post-landing, otherwise his life was in danger. But with the world ending, no doctors in hospitals. The Bearded Man encouraged her, but she outright exploded. How can a vet pilot a plane? The Bearded Man felt awkward. The Major suggested they discuss it after landing. But with the pilot unconscious, who would fly? The Bearded Man claimed Kelly could, but he felt unsure with passengers' skeptical looks. When Kelly learned of the plan, she flatly rejected it, as she only knew how to fly helicopters, and piloting a passenger plane was a joke. But with the situation critical, Kelly reluctantly agreed to step up.